Hello all. It's been quite a while since I've made a video. I've had lots and lots and lots of things going on, and I just wanted to respond to all of your sweet comments to me, asking me to give you an update. What I really wanted to talk about, I'm doing great. Everybody is doing great. We are past our empty nest thing and starting to enjoy life with an empty nest, which I didn't think was possible, but it is possible, and we're doing it. What I really wanted to make a video about is about going on a solo trip. Last summer, it was about this time that I started making plans to go on a trip by myself, just me and Jesus, and it went beautifully. There was planning put into it. I planned each step of the way. I had a 4-day trip with the Lord. I left on, I want to say I left on Wednesday, Thursday. I think I left on Thursday. I flew out on Thursday, and I came back Sunday. So it was a quick trip, but it was really, really good. So what my plan was to have my solo trip with the Lord, and it was just my private spiritual retreat. That's what my goal was, to go have an alone time with the Lord. I learned about having alone time with the Lord, like deliberately on purpose going and having a getaway with the Lord, from a friend of mine in Asheville named Thelma. And this was when I was a brand spanking new Christian, and Thelma talked about how we were in the car going somewhere together, and she pointed at a little motor lodge on the side of the road not far from my home or our church, and she said, that's where I go have my retreat every year. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, oh, I book a room there one time for a weekend every year, and I go there with my Bible, and I bring my food with me, and I just have a weekend with Jesus. And I was like, really? You live on a farm? Kind of. You know, she had a husband that was busy growing things and taking care of the property, and he's also a builder, and lots of kids and grandkids, and yet she said that she made time to go and be alone with the Lord one weekend every year. And I wondered what that was like. She said, well, I kept the TV off all weekend, and back then they just had a regular landline phone in the rooms, and she said, and I took the phone off the hook because I didn't want anyone calling me, and I knew no one was going to call me, and I didn't need to call anybody or talk to anybody. Everybody in my family knew where I was, and they could get to me if they needed to. So I just went with my Bible, and I packed things to eat, apples and things like that to eat over the weekend, and I spent my time praying and praising and thanking God, seeking Him for guidance and direction, but mostly I just wanted to be alone with Him without interruption, without having to minister to anybody else, but just be alone with Him. Let Him minister to me, and let me receive His ministry. And so, gosh, I think she told me about that in 2003, and I finally did it in 20 years later in 2023. So I had it on my bucket list to go to the Ark Encounter, and I knew that it was in rural, I thought Ohio, but it's in rural Kentucky, and I live in South Carolina on the coast. And so I just sat down on the computer one day, and I actually didn't even have the computer open. I think I did everything on my phone. So I plotted out a trip for, I started in June, and I plotted out my trip for the 4 days. And there was more that I wanted to do. I also wanted to go to a Beth Moore conference, which happened to be happening in Lexington, Kentucky. And so because of that, when that conference was, that's when I planned to make my trip, because I really wanted to see Beth Moore in person. I had done lots of her Bible studies and seen her, on video a million times and all that, but I really wanted to be in person at one of those Bible studies. So, but I wanted to do the Ark Encounter, and since the Beth Moore conference was happening, and it was Friday night and Saturday day, I knew that and the flights were direct flights from here to the closest airport for me to the Ark Encounter, and probably for anybody, I guess, I don't know, it is Cincinnati Airport, which actually isn't even in Cincinnati. It's in Kentucky. They call it Cincinnati Airport, I guess, because it's closest to Cincinnati. So I took a direct flight on a Thursday, and my husband dropped me off, and I had my backpack and all my clothes, and I flew into Cincinnati. I had a car waiting for me, a rental car, which was hilarious because my car next year is going to be 25 years old. I drive a very old car. It's an old Toyota that just runs and runs, and if you looked at it, you never go, oh, that's a 25-year-old car. But I had never been in a car that didn't have like a key you stick in the ignition. And the rental place was upstairs in the airport, and they sent me downstairs to the car lot, and I got out there and I found the car, but I couldn't figure out what to do with it. And so I just sat there and I was like, okay, Lord, what in the heck do I do here? And I had a little key fob that she gave me, and I just didn't know what to do. And I saw a button that said push to start, and I pushed it, nothing happened, but a little somewhere in the car it said step on the brake. So I stepped on the brake and I pushed it, and haha, that's what happened. So you can teach an old dog new tricks, and I learned something new that day. And I know the Lord gave me wisdom and helped me come out of the Stone Ages, I guess. The Ark Encounter is in the middle of nowhere, truly, and the countryside is so beautiful. It's gorgeous. For a nature lover like me, I was like, oh, this is gorgeous. I don't recall being in that part of Kentucky ever before, and it was beautiful. But I didn't go that first day because I had to concentrate on getting to my room, which I booked one night in a place called the North Star Inn, which was a mom and pop. And when I was on the plane going there, I was really trying to focus on the Lord and not think about me, how am I going to do this? Honestly, that was my goal, was to spend time with the Lord, include Him, pray about everything. And so, of course, I prayed as I was planning the trip, but I prayed on the plane, and I started to get hungry as the day wore on, and I was thinking as I was getting close to landing, I would love to have a chopped steak with mashed potatoes and gravy, a roll, dare I say it, because I generally don't eat bread, fried okra, and a glass of milk for dinner. That's really, really what I wanted. And I checked into this sweet little mom and pop, and their little restaurant was only open for breakfast, and it was dinner time. And so I Googled what was close around me, and there was a truck stop on the other side of the overpass of the freeway that led me there. So I checked into my room, which was a self-check-in, and put my stuff down, and everything was fine and dandy in the room. Just you didn't need much, and it wasn't much, and it was perfectly clean and nice. In fact, in the room at the North Star Inn, when I checked in, there were 2 bottles of water. I was so thirsty, and 2 little like chewy granola bars that little kids eat, and I ate it instantly because I was so hungry. And then I went across the overpass to this, I wish I could think of the name of the, I can't think of it, but there, right across the overpass from the North Star Inn is a truck stop. And there were hardly any cars outside. And I walked in, and one side when I walked in was the, like the store part of the truck stop where you would buy a convenience store. And then the other side of this truck stop where I walked in was the restaurant. And there was paneling on the walls, and all the tables were this heavy, like furniture. This place was genuine article from like 1965. Like nothing had changed. And I smelled cigarette smoke instantly when I walked in the place. And there was, I am not kidding you, inside the restaurant, there was a little old man teetering back and forth with his trucker hat on. He had cowboy boots, jeans that were kind of almost falling off of him because he was so skinny, and a lit cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and he was paying for his dinner. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's smoking inside this restaurant. I had not seen that in years, but it was like a total flashback. And I thought, these people own this place and they can do whatever they want. And so there it was, and it was happening. And of course, everybody looked at me like I was from outer space, because I guess it was a very much locals place. And this beautiful young lady came up to me and said, "You can sit wherever you want." And everyone's just kind of staring at me. So I went, there was a main room, and I went to the second dining room. And I walked in, I couldn't figure out why nobody was in there. And when I looked to the side, there were broken down, abandoned pool tables. The ceiling was falling out. And directly across from me was this beautiful little deer on the wall. And I thought, okay, I'm going to sit next to this big window looking out on these beautiful green hills, and I think maybe a cemetery over there, and eat my dinner. So she brought me a menu. The first thing I saw on the menu was dinner specials. Chopped steak, mashed potatoes and gravy, fried okra, and a roll. And the Lord blessed my brains out. That was what I asked for on the airplane. Exactly the meal I asked for on the airplane. And so the beautiful little girl came, and I said, "Can I have a glass of water, and can I have a glass of milk?" And she said, "Milk?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Chocolate milk?" And I said, "No, just white milk. Do you have that?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "I'd like a glass of water and a glass of milk." She goes, "Okay." I said, "I know what I want." And she said, "Okay." So I ordered it, and she brought it out, and it was delicious. It was so good. And it was even better because I knew that God answered my prayer. So that was how the trip started. And I just was almost in tears eating that meal, knowing that God goes before me, right? He goes before you. He knows what he has planned for you. Your times are in his hands, and you have not because you ask not. So, people give me a hard time about praying about everything. I pray about everything because that's my relationship with God. That's how God and I started having a relationship. If you don't know my testimony, when I was 13 years old and an unchurched girl, my mom, we lived near the ocean, and I loved to go to the ocean every day. And we lived in a great big house that was open house every weekend. My mom was the realtor, my dad was the builder, and my mom had tasked me with cleaning the blinds, the mini blinds. These were not mini, they were wooden blinds that were custom made. This was in the early 80s, and she made me take a bucket of hot water and vinegar and a rag and stick my hand in it and clean every single blind. And I hated it. I still hate the smell of vinegar to this day. My husband eats his sneaky salad over there. And I got really frustrated. God gave me a Jewish best friend who told me about God, that he made everything and everyone, and he cares about everything and everyone. I didn't know who God was, and so that's what I knew about God, and that he listens to us. And so I stood there in my parents' den, 13 or 14 years old, and I watched my brother through the window go by on his Huffy with his boogie board under his arm, and I was so mad. And I screamed at the ceiling at God, and I said, "If you're there and you really care, help me clean these blinds." And a utility truck went by, and I saw it through the window, and something fell off the truck, and I heard a voice say to me, "Go pick that up, that's for you." And I opened the blinds and looked, and yeah, there was totally something there. And I ran through the house and ran down the street, and I saw a package sitting there, and I picked up the package, and it was five big pipe cleaners on a handle, and it had a plastic cover over it and a piece of paper, and there were only 2 words on the piece of paper, and it said blind cleaner. So, my parents and my brother laughed that night. It was a coincidence. God didn't help me with housework. And, but that's been my relationship with God always, is answered prayer. So I don't ever feel bad about asking God for anything, because he wants to be included in our lives. And the more times that I've read through the Bible, the more I see how the people in the Bible who included God in their lives, God really showed off. You can read Daniel, awesome. Daniel was captive almost his whole life, and he had to serve foreign kings, and God consistently did miracles in Daniel's life and in the lives of the people that he served. So that's just one example. Kings and Chronicles filled with all the kings who humbled themselves for however long they did and sought the Lord. He did miracles in their lives, and God will do miracle a miracle in your life in this day and age if you include him in it and you ask him. Dare to ask him, because the answer is no unless you ask him. So there was me sitting there eating my sweet little chopped beef and yummy mashed potatoes and drinking my sweet and cold milk, and it was fabulous. And I had thanked him profusely and went back to the room and had a beautiful evening alone with the Lord in the room. I read my Bible, I wrote my journal, gave him all the praise and the glory. I had a wonderful night's sleep. I usually do. I don't struggle with that. God is so good to me. Return to your rest, O my soul, for the Lord has dealt bountifully with you. That's Psalm 116, verse 7. Rod painted it on a painting, and we have it above our bed. Psalm 116, verse 7. And then the next day was for me I had a reservation to go to the Ark Encounter. And it was like, I don't know, 10 miles up the road or something like that. So I got my handy-dandy little funny car and rented car and drove up there. I had already paid for parking. They told me where to park. I got out and I was just giddy to be by myself, but there was a feeling in the air and an expectancy. There were people from all over the world that were there. Just standing in line was exciting. I mean, I saw a whole family of, I guess they were Amish. They were all dressed in black, but they had like cobalt blue tops on. Their shirts were blue, and the bonnet that the mommy had on, I think, was black or blue. Maybe it was white, I don't know. But she was carrying a baby, and then I watched all of the children, like the steps of all the children, all the ages. She had a big family, and the daddy was standing there with the beard, and he had the most precious, sweet look on his face. And they looked a little frightened. People were staring at them. I tried not to stare, and I made eye contact with the mom, and I was from one homeschooling mom, one stay-at-home mom, to another. I just looked at her with love and compassion and mercy and kindness, and we shared a sweet smile for a minute, and it was very, very sweet. I heard people talking in foreign languages, so there were people from around, the world. We got on buses, and you could see the Ark way off in the distance. The thing is gigantic. It's so massive. I can't even tell you I can't explain it to you. It's so big. But you see it off in the distance, and you're like, sure enough, that's it. And then when you get there and you're in front of it, you're like, nah. I mean, it is so spectacular. It is amazing. My understanding is that it was built without power tools, just like Noah built it. So anyways, it took Noah 100 years to build it, the real one. I wanted to see how this was. How did these people live like this? How did they do it? How did these animals survive? Where was the food stored? What was going on at the time in the world that was so vile? And they had all these little dioramas in there throughout that showed you different things, and it's set up like you just keep walking up these decks, ramps. So there's not stairs. There's probably stairs, but I didn't walk stairs. They were these really beautiful, wide, it's gorgeous, wide ramps, And if there was, like, some people have to ride the scooters. The disabled and older people have to be on, and that's, and usually they're not tiny little people. And so they've got two scooters side by side. But the beauty of being by myself was that I got to squirm around them and get in front of them. The big families, the school groups or camp groups or whatever they were, because this was like the first week of August. I got to just go by myself, and at the end of each deck was something else. Something like one of them had a little bakery at the end, one of the decks. And they had these chocolate chip cookies. I'm not kidding you. They were like this big, like the size of a saucer. And I thought, note to self, when I'm ready for a cookie, I'm going to go get one of those cookies. And then if I missed something because there were people standing in front of it or blocking it, I got to go back because I was alone. There wasn't somebody to go, oh, we already saw that. I'm ready to go. I want to do something else. It's wonderful when you go by yourself and you're with the Lord. And I asked God to help me understand what I was seeing, because I was seeing things that I didn't quite understand. I was wondering if that was put there for effect, or was that part of the plan? it caused me to go back to my Bible at night. Of course, I was reading the Noah account in Genesis 6, 7, 8, and 9 and beyond in the morning before I went. It was spectacular. I had a better understanding of things, and that I work right now at a pregnancy resource center. We help ladies who are thinking they want abortion, and then trying to help them see that there are resources, and we provide a lot of resources for them to let their baby live, to keep their baby. You're not alone in this. And so when I saw one of the dioramas was some kind of false god at the top of a big outdoor stairwell that had a scalding lap, and they were bringing their children up to kill their babies in this furnace lap god. It was terrible. But I understood, the heart of man is selfish. We want to do what we want to do. And I saw God's heart, how long it's been broken over us just casting aside the image bearers. Because every baby is sacred, and every baby is someone that God made in an image bearer. And it made me think about the place where I work with more awe than I had before. Also, and I don't really work in that part of it, although I pray for them all the time. The task that God has me on is different. I get to help with the programs for post-abortive ladies, or ladies who've endured sexual abuse, something else we're getting ready to start. So we have Bible studies that we help ladies as they make their way through that healing process. And I went through the healing process. So God has been very good to me in healing me. And then they have an outside zoo. Honestly, I have to make a little disclaimer here. I can't stand to see animals locked up. I don't care if they are in a zoo or at an aquarium. I've got to this place in my life where I can't wait to go to heaven because I want to see them roaming everywhere free. But I saw a zorse, or I don't know what it was called. It was like a horse and a zebra mixed together. I think it was called a zorse. I saw it in real life. They have a zorse there. It's this great big giant horse, but it's striped brown and dark brown like a zebra. Excuse me. It was incredible. I couldn't stop staring at it, and all these little kids were climbing on the bench getting in front of me, and I was like, hey, get out of the way, I want to see it. But it was incredible. And then I did get the cookie, and then I met a man who knows Brian Jekyll, who is one of my favorite Christian artists. I have 2 of his works, and he is the art instructor at Pensacola Christian College. Not the guy I met, but the man his name's Brian Jekyll, who's the artist. And this man worked with Brian Jekyll, and he also learned under him. He went there, and I got to stand there and hear this man's fabulous testimony about how God brought him to himself, and when he was rebelling as a teenager, and he was raised by a Christian family, and when he got old enough, he was like, see ya, I'm not interested in this, and how God brought him back to himself. And now he does art for homeschool books, and that was an incredible experience. Being able to stand there, because I was alone with the Lord, and spend as long as this man wanted to tell me his testimony. I got to ask him questions, and we just had this really amazing one-on-one time together. It was beautiful. I went and had lunch by myself in the cafeteria on the way out, and then I was on my way to Lexington. So I took lots of selfies and lots of pictures of the Ark, and I loved my time there, but I was watching my watch because I wanted to not have to get to Lexington in the dark. And it doesn't get dark in the summer until, like 9 o'clock, and I had plenty of time, but I just wanted to get to my hotel, get checked in, get situated. And so I ate my lunch, checked in with my family, called my husband and checked in with him, and then I was on my way to Lexington from where the Ark Encounter is. And I'm tooling down the road, and I'm loving the Lord, and I'm singing praise to him and just talking to him about everything. And all of a sudden I drove by a highway sign that said Asbury Theological Seminary, next exit, and I was like, no way. No way. And the Lord's like, yeah. So I changed my GPS to take me to Asbury Theological Seminary, and I wanted to go there. And it is this teensy weensy tiny little town. No wonder they told people stop coming, they can't handle it. It is beautiful, out in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, gorgeous, green everywhere, tiny little place. And the revival had happened the previous winter, spring time, and I wanted to go there and see where that happened. And honestly, I wanted to go there and get the feels, you know? And so the campus was closed for the summer, but the buildings were open. And I just parked my little funny car, and I saw the chapel, and I opened the door, and it was air conditioned, and no one was in there. And I walked in there, and I just walked into this room where the Lord had visited this campus. And I started talking to him. And I really wanted to feel something. So I got on my knees in front of the altar, and I started praying, just telling him how great he is and how I've loved my life he's given me. And I'm so grateful he made me his, and just having this really sweet prayer time with the Lord. And I didn't feel anything. I didn't get the feels. And I stayed there a little longer, and I thanked him anyway. I said, "Oh, I'm not having any feelings, but I thank you. I know you're listening. You always listen." And I left the building, took a drink of water, and went to the bathroom and left the building, and walked out to the car. And I said, "Oh, Lord, I really wanted to feel your presence." And I heard him say to me, "Your faith is so much more important than your feelings." I'm still riding on that one. So... And then that was absolutely a highlight. I stopped at a Kroger on the way to Lexington, got gas, went in the store and got some yummy things, got some salad, got some half and half from my hotel room for my coffee, and I bought Beth Moore a bouquet of really beautiful roses that I set on the stage when I got there that night. And I wasn't afraid. I was upset when I got to my motel, and I realized that I didn't let my daughter bless me the way she wanted to, and I should have listened to her, but I didn't listen to her. And so I stayed in the bare bones Red Roof Inn of the Universe, and I had the very last room at the end, which was very nice. And then across the way was some kind of, I think it was a Best Western, and a man walked across the parking lot in front of me, and he had like really messy clothes on, and I just went in my room, and I was like, okay, I gotta iron my dress. No iron. I looked for the fridge to put my half and half in. No fridge. I looked for the coffee maker. No coffee maker. And I was just like, okay, I didn't plan this right. And I didn't want to tell my daughter, because she said, "Mom, let me put you up at the Embassy Suites. I'll use my points. It's no big deal." And I was like, "Oh no, that's too much for me. I'll just stay in this, I can do it. I can do it." Why didn't I listen to her? So I had a whole adventure with the iron. I ran across to the Best Western and walked in there and said, "Do you have an iron that works?" to the manager. And she said, "Yes." And she told her coworker to run back there and get me one. I borrowed the iron. I brought it back to them and said, "Thank you." I didn't tell them I was from the motel across the street. There was a Starbucks across the street, so I went and splurged on an expensive cup of coffee in the morning. But that night was wonderful. I was all by myself, and I was surrounded by all these beautiful ladies who love Jesus. That's what I really wanted, to be around all these ladies who love Jesus. Worship with Travis Cottrell was wonderful. It was so good. And there was a pregnant lady there with her mother, and the mother ran and got Beth and grabbed her by the arm and said, "You have to pray for my grandbaby. This is my first grandbaby." And so Beth brought the pregnant lady out and laid her hands on her belly and prayed this amazing prayer for the baby that has not been born yet. And I was so blessed to be in the room and part of that prayer. And I got to talk to people from all over. There was people there from Georgia and Texas, Alabama. They were from all over, and they were like, you're here by yourself?" And I was like, "Well, I'm here with Jesus." And they're like, you traveled all the way from Myrtle Beach to here by yourself?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I wanted to be alone with the Lord, and I wanted to see Beth more. I wanted to learn." And so it was good. And they said, "Aren't you afraid?" And I'm like, I thought about, aren't you afraid? People ask me that sometimes. And I said, no, I'm not afraid, because There was a Jewish lady in Florida when I lived there, gosh, 10 years ago. I wanted her to walk with me. I walked alone, and I saw her walking alone, and I wanted her to walk with me, really, because I want to evangelize to her. And so I stopped her one morning, and I said, hey, would you like to walk together? And she says to me, no, I don't like that big scary guy that walks with you. He gives me the creeps. There ain't no big scary guy that I've ever seen that walks with me. But this lady said, there's a big scary guy that walks with me, and he gives her the creeps. And I thought about Corrie ten Boom and how she prayed that that Bible that was hanging around the back of her neck when she got to the concentration camp would be invisible to the guards who made everybody strip down naked and before they deloused them. And God did make that Bible be a beacon of hope in a dark place. And so this lady, my neighbor, says that there's a big scary guy that walks with me, and he gives her the creeps. So that's his name. I say, thank you, God, for the big scary guy that walks with me, and he gives so-and-so the creeps. So God is able to make seeing eyes blind and blind eyes see. The second day, Saturday, let me tell you what happened. This is why I said I wasn't afraid. So I went home, went back to the room. Well, when I left, there was nobody there. I thought it was like one of 3 people. And got home, got back to the room at 9 o'clock at night, wearing my heels and my dress, had my little bag. I wasn't sure about the place, so I went ahead and put my suitcase back in the rental car and took it with me because I just wasn't feeling good about leaving all my belongings in the room. Except I left my dresses that I ironed, hung up. And the whole entire parking lot is filled with men. They're outside at their trucks drinking and talking, and they're workmen. They've been working all day, and now they're back at the ranch. And here I am, and I drove up, and all of a sudden the parking lot got quiet because I'm like the only female in the vicinity. And I get out of this little car at the end of the motel, and I pull my suitcase out of the back, and I did leave the TV on. And they're watching me walk up to the door, and I thought, what am I going to do? So I knocked on the door. Knock, 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 knock. And I waited. They're all kind of watching. And then I knock, 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 knock again. And I said, aren't you going to open up the door? And of course there was nobody in there to open up the door. So I looked at the key, like, what do I do with this? I stuck it in the thing. And I opened the door, and I said, you weren't going to let me in. And I came in, I slammed the door and put all the bolts that I could, dragged a chair in front of it, and I thought, oh gosh, I'm so glad that there is a big scary guy that walks with me and gives her the creeps. Yep. The next day was the last day of the conference, the second day of the conference. It was fantastic. I wish the teaching was more biblical. She was really relaying how she had left the Southern Baptist Convention and had joined up with the Anglican Church. And, it wasn't so much about a Bible study as it was about what God was teaching her in her life. And I took a lot of notes. So the worship was spectacular. I think I was there for the worship because I was there to be with Jesus. I was there to honor God. I was there to love on my Father. I was there to love Him with the Holy Spirit. And the worship was outrageous. And Travis Cottrell kept telling everybody, his worship team, they're worshiping us off the stage. And so we did that at the end. We kept worshiping and worshiping and worshiping at the very last song. That when it was this whole room of women, and we were worshiping the Lord in a cappella, and when we opened our eyes, the whole stage was dark and they were gone. We worshiped them off the stage and we just kept worshiping the Lord. That was wonderful. And then I went around and looked at a lot of things in Lexington. I found a Whole Foods, and I went in there because I love that. And just kept talking to the Lord and praising Him and thanking Him for keeping me safe and showing me what He wanted to show me. And my plane was going to leave Sunday morning, and I had to drive back to the airport and catch my plane, and I did that and got into the airport, and there was my hubby waiting on me, and it was an awesome time with the Lord. I think that anybody who wants to go have a getaway with Jesus needs to do it. Pray about it. Pray where you want to go. Pray how long you can go for. Take your Bible. Take a notebook that's empty, a pen that you love, a water bottle, and go do it. I did it, and I'm grateful, and I'm different for it. And I highly recommend it to anyone else. Okay, God bless you.